I have a personality that I love to research beforehand. I think, again, that comes from my need for control and understanding before I make the jump.
Yeah.
But you can research your heart out, but it doesn't mean jack unless you take action.
Hey there. My name is Dr. Beth Russell, and I want to know, what would you do if you were not afraid? Right now. What would your life, your job, your relationships look and feel like if you could be unapologetically you? What's holding you back? This podcast is for anyone that wants to make a change but isn't sure where to start. Let's look inward together and let's talk about you and me, our mental health, our self-care, inner and outer selves, and all that makes us, well, us. It's time to get real, feel the feels, challenge what's holding us back, and connect. This is the Authentic and Brave podcast. Today's episode is one of my favorites. Shelley Latouf is an entrepreneur, businesswoman, international traveler, mama, and most important to me, my sister. I asked Shelley to be on the podcast when we were both in LA last month, and she agreed. Shelley owns Cali Findings, whose goal is to provide unique and quality jewelry findings to businesses, crafters, and creators around the globe. She has a unique story and learned early in her life to listen to her authentic knowing that took her on a journey halfway around the world to build a family with a man that she loves, has created several businesses, and is one of the bravest people I know. I could go on and on about how wonderful this woman is, but I'll let you hear it for yourself.
Today, I have brought on one of my all-time favorite people, and she has such an authentic and brave journey that I was very excited when I was recently in California that she agreed to come on the podcast with me. So I want to welcome everyone to my sister, Shelley.
Hello, everybody. And thank you to Beth. I was actually really shocked when you asked me to be on the show. And I said, what do you want to ask me? And she said, well, your story. And it took me a minute. And I said, yeah, I guess I do kind of have a unique story. I kind of forget because for me, it's just my everyday life. But when I think back to what I've done and where I'm at today, yeah, it's been a journey. It's kind of fun to share. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'm so psyched that you're here. It's so funny when I think about authenticity and I think about bravery, you are absolutely one of the first people that come to my mind, because who you are now, if you had told me when we were younger and growing up that you were going to be living halfway across the world in a different country and having your own business in another part of the world simultaneously, and that we didn't live next door to each other, I wouldn't believe you.
Well, and same here. I mean, growing up, the thought of going to university in New York City was a crazy idea. I was accepted into Pratt, and I was so excited. I always wanted to be in the arts and wanted to be an artist. And, New York City was such a big jump, a big leap. And I ultimately didn't go there. Growing up in just a small town, it was really scary. And here I am now living in Beirut, Lebanon, which at the time I didn't even know where it was on a map.
Yep.
And lived in Italy and lived 10 years in Los Angeles. So yeah, I've been all over the place and now get to travel to cool places, Singapore and China and Turkey, which is just fantastic. But yes, it's like two different people.
Yeah. So growing up, there's you and me, and then we have an older brother as well. If you had said that you would be the one to travel the world, to live in a different country, I absolutely would have said, oh, wait, no, that's our older brother.
That's David. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's done some amazing adventures and traveling too. But, you tell me, how would you describe yourself kind of growing up? And then how did you end up where you were?
Growing up, definitely shy, timid, homebody, 100%. I was always creative. Mm-hmm. So I've always had that piece, and I still carry that today. But I always felt I was a little bit different than my peers. I did great in school, but I was always just a little bit different. I felt almost a little bit older than my age. I don't know if it's because my siblings were older or I spent a lot of time with our mom. So I was interested in different things. Instead of being interested in buying CDs and music, I was buying looms for weaving, which is really crazy, and painting with my grandmother. So I had different interests than everybody else. And now today, although I'm still very shy, I'm very much an introvert, I'm more confident and very independent. So very stubborn and love stability, which is kind of crazy thinking back at all the things that I've done. But I do like a plan. So if, I'm a classic Taurus, I always say, which is stability. I'm very loyal. I have a very small knit, close group of friends. Trust is a big one for me.
You're a list maker.
Oh, yeah. Control freak.
Color coded.
Yes. I like my plan.
You are.
I do not like change. I like to know what's coming.
And yet you do have such a creativity and a creative side. I mean, that's how you ended up going to college for art.
Correct.
And we thought you were going to be kind of going into painting, or even after like working for our dad, who was an auctioneer and appraiser, something to do with art. And your college career kind of took you in a little different direction.
Right. So going to college, finished the 4 years and didn't really have a plan, but I wanted a plan that to feel okay and to feel good in my life. I always needed a plan. So I thought, well, I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to teach art. I want to be an artist. I know that that's a real stretch. Really, to be a starving artist was not the ideal situation. So I said, well, I should probably go to graduate school and do another 4 years if I want to be serious. And although I graduated with honors and had great recommendations from professors, I had one professor in particular that basically said you shouldn't continue.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And until now, that's very painful to think about. And she was very harsh. And it was unexpected. So that turned me upside down. Suddenly I didn't know what to do. And in my junior year, I had gone to Florence, Italy for a semester, study abroad, had the time of my life, absolutely loved it. So I came back, had to finish school, of course, graduated, and thought, well, you know what? I was the happiest in Italy. I've got some money squirreled away. To hell with it. I'm going. So I convinced a girlfriend to go with me, and we rented an apartment, and I went for like a month. I had enough money to stay for a month, and that was it. And 2 weeks in, I met George, who is now my husband.
Who has his own crazy story of kind of how he ended up in Italy.
Yes. So our worlds collided there in Florence. And he had his life already set up. Like I was just, young and not sure what I was going to do. He had 2 leather shops in Florence. So I should back up a little bit and say that he's not Italian. He was born in Lebanon and left the house when he was about 18 and went off on his own. He studied in France for a little while. He did some traveling and then ended up with a friend in Florence. And worked his way through and got his own shop, which was like a really big deal, and sold handbags. Beautiful leather
really
handbags. Gorgeous.
I wouldn't have minded a few of those these days.
Right. So we got serious very quickly.
Yeah. You did.
So we met and, we talked about all the really serious stuff within the first 2 weeks. I mean, we went through all the taboo subjects that if we had done this in the US would have freaked anybody out. We talked about family, religion, abortion. Where do you stand on all the taboo, huge subjects in life? And said, well, this is going really well. So we should meet the families because
I remember we were all like, I'm sorry, wait, what?
Yeah.
We thought, okay, you're going off for a month to kind of play after college, kind of figure out who am I? And then you'd come back and, get a job or go to grad school. And so the fact that you went, you met the man that you fell madly in love with. And, it was a whirlwind romance. And I can remember, I had started my family by then. And I was like, oh, well, you're going to come home and, raise babies with next door to me. And you were like, I don't think so. I'm actually going to be going back pretty quickly to Florence. Yeah. It was quite a shock.
So I came home very shortly thereafter and I sat everybody down. I remember just saying, this is going to sound
crazy.
Insane. But my gut is telling me something and I have to go and figure this out. I said, if I'm right, he's the one. And I realized how fast it is. And I was only 22 at the time.
Yeah, you were young.
But I knew what I was doing. I felt it and I really trusted my gut.
Yeah.
And, everybody just said, okay. But inside of them, I'm sure they said, you'll be back in a couple of weeks. This will not last. But here we are. We got married in 2009. Yeah. And we got married in Lebanon.
In Lebanon.
So to back up a little bit, we met in Italy. I met his family. We traveled a little bit. I stayed with him and learned the business. I started designing handbags. We were using local designers and everything, but I was using my creativity and had that little nice outlet. And I used to work in the shop and sell to tourists. And I had a blast. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And so we had some really great time together. Those were the formative years. And then we got married in Lebanon. We took the family and
Yep, that's great.
and then shortly thereafter, we said, well, we don't really want to build our life in Italy. And people say, why the heck did you leave Florence? Like, what were you thinking? And Italy is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I would go back in a heartbeat, but for a vacation. It's not for living. We were always called stranieri. Our accents were caught in a second. And you were always, stranieri means stranger. Okay, so you were always an outsider. You were never going to be a local. Even though we had lots of local friends and we were always invited and everything, it's just not home. We said we don't want to have our kids here, and we don't have any support system. His family, my family, it was just the two of us. So we said, where are we going to go? And well, our business is in fashion. So New York City, it's too cold. Okay, the other choice is Los Angeles. So we picked up everything, sold the shop, but we moved from retail to wholesale, thinking this was going to be the next step for us. And we moved to Los Angeles. And then
the tides turned a little bit.
Roller coaster.
So you followed your heart, your gut, which took you to George, which took you to Italy, which took you from not quite knowing what you wanted to do to this new business, creating and designing handbags and then wholesale, which ultimately took you to Los Angeles with the dream and the belief of, this is the next step. And then when you got here, it didn't quite pan out the way you thought it was going to.
No, we got the smack of our lives.
Yeah.
We really thought we knew our business in and out. We knew our clients in and out, and it just didn't work simply. The demand wasn't there. We were doing trade shows and we just couldn't make it work.
It wasn't for lack of hard work or trying.
No,
my goodness.
Sure.
Yeah, it was. I remember.
We invested every dime we had. And there was no contingency plan. We did not have a backup. I mean, we believed so wholeheartedly and
it just, the timing or whatever, it just didn't work.
It fell flat and we lost everything.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. It was a really rough time. I mean, so much so that I don't think I ever told you, we were grocery shopping with $14 to our name.
Wow. Yeah.
It was a really tough time. And it's funny now to look back on it. I mean, thank God we grew from that. Okay. And now we're in a great position. But looking back on that, George, my husband, doesn't like to remember those or to reminisce on that. And I like it. And I remind him to look back and see where we were. We were always a team.
Yeah.
And those experiences helped us. It was really early in our relationship. It could have very easily broken us, but we stuck together. We were always.
What made you stronger? And I think, I mean, just from somebody on the outside, knowing the pieces that I did know, you guys were unwavering.
Yeah.
As hard as it was and as disappointed and as heartbreaking. I mean, because you guys you both, I can remember, were heartbroken. And it forced you to have to change direction.
Right. Until now, it sucks. I wish we had the handbags. I wish things had been different. I wish I had taken better decisions, probably wouldn't have fallen as hard. But part of me still wants to hold on to that. I miss those. They were fantastic. But sometimes you hold on. And I remember having a conversation with her dad and calling him at some of the worst time and saying, Dad, what do you do when you give not 100%, 150%, and it's not enough?
And it's not working.
What do you do?
Yeah.
What's the answer? We just felt so broken and we were desperate to do anything. And it felt like at that point, every day was 100 days. Somehow we got through and we built back up and then we changed directions but we struggled together and I'm grateful for those times.
Do you think if you hadn't experienced that life would be, well, of course life would be different. It's kind of a silly question, but do you think you had to go through that downtime
100%
to get where you are now?
100%.
Looking
I
back.
couldn't be grateful. I couldn't be happy. I couldn't be in the position that I'm in right now without those experiences and those decisions. And that's part of the deal. You don't really get out of life. If everything's hunky-dory, are you really living?
Yeah. Yeah, true. Well, and I think I'm guessing moving to Lebanon and kind of the next part of your journey too, having a business here in California, having a child, all of that might have been different had you stayed and had you,
Definitely.
So you said, it was hard. It brought you together. Both of you really pushed through when there wasn't a lot of energy to push through. How did you change it? How did you, because you said, you asked our dad, what do you do? What do you do? Like, what's the answer?
Well, it's tough because even looking back now, I can't pinpoint what exactly we did. I think we went in so many different directions trying to figure out. I think we learned to be extremely open to opportunities because what we thought was going to work, we learned very quickly, you don't have the answers. So we were talking to the universe, talking to God, looking at our community, at everything around us, what other people were doing, what our competitors were doing, what's available to us, what can we use, what tool can we use, what passion of ours do we have, what can we give, what can we improve on, anything in any industry to make money to survive.
Yeah.
So that really opened us because there's a book I loved reading by Robert Kiyosaki. It's like #1 times bestseller, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And there's a line in there, he talks about finance and learning how to deal with money and reconsidering how you think about money. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. Anyway, he talks about training your mind to see an opportunity of how to make money. So instead of saying to your kids, here's an allowance, no, why don't you tell me something? Why don't you come up with an idea?
Yep.
Okay. Because once you train your mind to be open to an idea, a new opportunity, you will always find them.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say like what made that transition. It wasn't a clear answer. We just tried a new thing. We decided to go for jewelry, and it was a slow process because we certainly didn't have the money to all of a sudden invest in something completely different. So we built it up slowly and tested it and tried it.
Yeah. I mean, I think knowing you and knowing George, both of you at your hearts are bosses.
Yes.
And in similar yet different ways, you both were clear you wanted to work for yourselves. You did not want to go and kind of get a 9-to-5 somewhere else, that you weren't quite sure what the vision was, but you knew you could do it.
Right.
You knew, like you said, if you were open enough, you did a ton of research. You both did a ton of trial and error. And eventually you ended up opening a really successful Etsy shop.
Right.
I mean, it's still running today.
Right.
Yeah. So how did you kind of get onto that, and what do you do now?
So we used to work in markets here on the West Coast. Weather is beautiful. Every weekend there are several markets, handmade artists, antique markets, you name it, there's everything. So that was an opportunity for us very inexpensively to get into, again, a retail system. Yeah. So we started buying jewelry and entering into that. And we felt completely ignorant. I had no idea what to buy, what styles. We went into the wholesale district and looking, and it was like a whole new world, a language I didn't understand. I mean, here I am, a woman, I've loved accessories all my life. Are you kidding?
You've been a shopper your whole life.
But yet, what do people buy?
Yeah.
What do they like here? Like, how do I possibly choose? So you learn, and we would always look at our competition and see what's selling, because the LA style is very different than, let's say, New York style, what I grew up with, or what we used to sell. You'd see in Florence is very different here. So we started very slowly. And then I said, this is really not enough. And I remember thinking there was a trend, a really hot trend, knuckle rings. I don't know if you remember that. So we were selling those like hotcakes in the market. I said, you know what? I don't really see a lot of these online. We should really buy them and take photos and do online. So I started the Etsy shop doing that. I sold only little rings, and I was offering free shipping, even to my demise. I was really cutting my profits just to get a momentum and get a following. And then I got into Etsy and said, this is working. So we expanded from there. And then we realized pretty quickly that we're doing retail face-to-face is great, but online is very difficult. Now I realize there's so many shops out there that's what they do. And great for you.
Mhm.
In a shop setting, person to person, I have no problem with customer service, but I personally, that is not my strong suit.
Mhm.
So I would rather deal with the wholesale. Like
Yeah.
we said, we had done wholesale with my handbags, and I wanted to go big,
Mhm.
you know? And I thought, well, there's so many of people out there at the shows,
Mhm.
downtown, selling online, selling on Etsy, so
Yeah.
many shops, handmade shops. There's a whole section of sellers that are selling supplies.
Mhm.
And I said, why don't we go into a niche?
Yeah.
Something
So important.
exactly. So
And you guys really went into a niche before a niche was a thing.
right.
You know, this, when you were really doing this was 13 years ago.
Yes.
You know, now everyone talks about, you need a niche in order, you know,
Right.
for a podcast, you know, for a shop, anything like that. But you guys really found that niche early before a lot of the other sellers.
Right. So we went
Mhm.
into the supply category and started a shop and specialized in chains and the pieces and the parts, the clasps, the jump rings, and narrowing in on what's really selling at our local markets, what's needed. And these things were great because photography, you need only 1 or 2 photos. It's a steady supply. Your trends don't change a whole lot. Sure, you need to update,
Mhm.
but that would save me a lot instead of changing the collection every 2 weeks and
Yeah.
needing to do a whole new photography. I could keep my steady stream because the chains didn't change a lot,
Mhm.
but everybody needed to restock for those shows coming up.
Sure. Yeah.
So it just made sense. And it grew. Sure, it takes capital and everything. So we had to be patient with it. But once it started to go, thank goodness, it's still rocking.
And it's afforded you have expanded greatly in your shop, and you do other things besides chains. You're able to travel.
Mm-hmm.
So a few years ago, you guys had to make a decision as your daughter got older. What are we going to do for school?
Right.
She's extremely bright, just like her mama and her daddy. And, you know, being bilingual at that time, because George, where he comes from, where you come from, you really had to kind of think about what's the best for a family. And you guys ultimately decided to move to Lebanon for lots of reasons, for family support, but also for Addie and schooling.
Right.
And so then you had to make another decision. What do you do with your business?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, okay, looking down the road, where do we want to be?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I think we got to that same question of we were in Italy, work is great, we're happy, but life is not that great. The future is not there. Okay, what do we do? Same thing happened in LA.
Mhm.
We were in LA for 10 years looking
It's
at it.
hard to
Okay,
believe.
I know, it's so fast.
Mhm.
So we had Addie, our daughter, and we said, do we want to put her in school here? Okay, great. I don't want to be negative on LA. I
No.
still love LA.
No, I know.
Okay, but the schools that we were looking at weren't that great
Mhm.
if we want to compare it to Lebanon. It sounds so strange, third world country, but they have some of the best educations. I saw firsthand George's nieces and nephews who are older, they've been through the system, 3 languages,
I know.
English, French, Arabic,
which is amazing.
30. And they were doing science projects that were years ahead of their age of things that I had grown up with. And I said, should we try it? And George never really dreamed of living in LA, and he never really dreamed of living in Lebanon. And certainly I didn't either. But we said, if we want to be serious about this, we need to restructure our business, because right now the business doesn't function unless we're there.
Mhm.
So obviously, if we want to try and go to another country, we have to restructure the business,
Yep.
get an employee that we can trust and oversee, and cameras and a whole new system. So we said, we need to give ourselves at least a year and a half to restructure. If we're able to succeed,
Mhm.
then we can go and try. We said, we will give it 1 year.
Yeah.
We're not moving permanently. I mean, you're talking about giving up your house and moving and just,
Yeah. Just even moving your belongings, like all that way of what do you take, what do you
Right.
leave?
right.
Yeah.
It sounds great. And then when the reality hits in, it's a big project.
Mhm.
So it was a good 2 years of getting everything ready and getting everything together. But we said, okay, look, and Addie knew it. We're going to go for 1 year. We're going to try. If we're not happy, we're coming back. So we moved.
Mhm.
Okay. And it was perfect timing. So there, the system is a little bit different. They have what's called KG1, KG2, and KG3, which is kindergarten,
Mhm.
1, 2, and 3. You enter when you're about 3, 3.5.
Mhm.
So we scheduled the move to be exactly right before the time that she would register and enter
Yeah.
to school. She entered a school. We love the school. She's with her grandma and grandpa. She has aunts and uncles.
Yep.
She has cousins. She flourished.
Yeah,
She
really
became a
does.
completely different person. She went from a very shy, timid girl
Mhm.
who was very afraid of men
Yep. I
and
remember.
boys. And she, I mean, you know, she's the life of the party.
Yes, she is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she is doing fantastic. And I remember about 6 months in, George and I were like, I don't know. Are we going to stay or not? We were on the fence. And Addie said, oh, no, mommy and daddy and Addie are staying right here.
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Yeah. And what I love about what you're talking about is you as a person, and then as your company has evolved. At first, you weren't sure what you wanted to do. You then, joined George and his vision. The vision then changed. Then when you had a child, your business changed, but so did you.
Mm-hmm.
And so did, because you became a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at those decisions, not only what's best for me authentically, what do I want to feel fulfilled every day, but also what does my daughter need? What do we want to provide her?
Mm-hmm.
And Addie is pretty good at telling us what she wants and what she doesn't need. But what I want our listeners to kind of hear today is it hasn't been a straight road.
Absolutely not.
It has been like a mountain road, and then it's been in the valley, and you didn't give up.
Mm-hmm.
There were dark moments. There were difficult times. And there were times when you told me you listened to yourself, but you weren't quite sure what you were wanting, or you thought this was the right thing. And it did take some turns in order to really listen. What would you say to someone listening who wants to start their own business and has this need inside, the authentic voice is talking,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know where to start?
The longer you wait, the more you're going to regret it.
Yeah, start, right?
You need to start. Look, I have a personality that I love to research beforehand. I think, again, that comes from my need for control and understanding before I make the jump.
Yeah.
But you can research your heart out, but it doesn't mean jack unless you take action. So it takes bravery. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. Yeah. Just start. Yeah. Start little. Mm-hmm. Do one thing. Look at someone that you would like to be. Mm-hmm. Look at their history. Where did they start? Mm-hmm. How can I do it on a smaller scale? Look at somebody that has already done it, whatever your project is, whatever you're thinking about, and look at their product or their book or whatever it is that they've done, okay? And say, what can I offer that's unique? Mm-hmm. What's different? Can I give better customer service? Can I be more creative? Can I give a more personal relationship? Can I offer a better connection with my clients? Can what sets you apart? And it is hard because I don't care what industry you're thinking about, it's saturated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're waiting for an opportunity to say, there's just so many out there, how could I compete? If you don't start, everybody starts small. That's the reality. A word to the wise. If you look out there at what you want to do, there's nobody doing it, think twice.
Yeah.
If you don't see a lot of competition out there, think twice. Mm-hmm. That was one of our issues that we had in our handbags. Mm-hmm. We were coming into a market where we saw what we thought was a need, when in reality, it just didn't work. So there was the really high-end handbags, okay? And there was the really crap stuff.
Yeah.
We came in with a quality product, unique designs, and a middle price range. Yeah. It just didn't hit. Nobody was doing it. And we thought, here's a golden opportunity. Nuh-uh. Nobody's doing it because it just doesn't work. Yeah. Yeah. So competition is a good thing. Mm-hmm. It gives you ideas. Mm-hmm. It gives you inspiration.
And there's room.
There's always a piece of the pie.
There is. It
always.
May take a little work. It may take a little turn in the road.
Right.
Or figuring out exactly what you bring.
Right.
But there is room.
If you don't try, you will regret. And in the end, so many very successful people, I'm sorry, I don't know his name, but the man who invented Skype, he created 10 huge businesses, 10 huge ideas that all failed. Okay. Yeah. It only takes one.
Right.
And I think the average is 10 ideas for that one hit.
I believe
so. You need only one hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just start
and keep going.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And ultimately, if you feel strongly about something, just do it, because there's a reason that you feel that way.
Well, I am so appreciative that you came on my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'll have you again anytime. Anytime. I'm going to link your Etsy shop on my page. What's your shop called?
Cali Findings. So Cali, like California, Findings for jewelry.
I love it. I love it. So I will absolutely put it everywhere I can.
Thank you.
So people can go on there and check it out.
Fantastic.
And I love you so much. I'm so glad that
you're here.
More. All right, everybody, keep on being authentic and brave. See you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Authentic and Brave podcast. I want to remind our listeners that the content of this podcast is not a substitute for professional therapy or medical advice. The information shared in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you are experiencing mental health issue or any other medical concern, we strongly encourage you to seek help from a licensed professional. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, also called NAMI, helpline is a great resource and can be reached at 1-800-950-NAMI or 1-800-950-6264. Thanks so much for tuning into the Authentic and Brave podcast. If you want more, head over to the AuthenticandBravePodcast.com for show notes and sign up for the mailing list so you'll never miss an episode. If you're looking for inspiration, connection, and people like you and me, be sure to join my exclusive community on Facebook. The link's waiting for you at AuthenticandBravePodcast.com. This is Dr. Beth Russell signing off. See you next time.